Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DiFilippo, and our guest again this week is the very successful president and CEO of the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame, Steve Hatchell. Steve, welcome back for week 2.
Thank you, Gene. This is fun. You have been a dear friend for so long. To do this week after week is really kind of fun. So I like it on all regards.
Well, thank you. You know, you and the National Football Foundation do so much work in your mission to promote amateur football, and some of the numbers that you and your staff have come up with are absolutely phenomenal. I know that our listeners out there would really like to hear some of the football by the numbers that you and your staff have created. Can you start there?
You bet. And keep in mind that philosophically, or you might say as a mission, and the reason that we do what we do is that our organization, as you well know, is 77 years old. So when it started in 1947, the whole idea is that there are great things in the game of football. Platform to get an education, platform for leadership, platform just to do a lot of things for the country. You got General Douglas MacArthur saying, when it comes to war or whatever, and he wants leaders, give me an Army football player to go do things. So we've got this magical period of time of what football can do. Well, what comes with that are challenges to the game, challenges to the success of the game, challenges to participation. And there was a time 5 or 6 years ago where it was pretty intense. The efforts were that if you ever wore a helmet in your life, you were going to have head injuries the rest of your life. It was one thing after another that you're really not a student, and you start lining up all of these challenges, and people would just shoot from the hip. How many kids are playing? Well, we heard the numbers are down. Well, let's verify the numbers. This is the role of the National Football Foundation. Take on the challenge, get a solution, find out what the real story is, and then you move ahead. And so I think the foundation, with the leadership that we've had, with John Hanson as the chairman, Ron Johnson as the chairman, with Archie as our chairman, that they've been very crystal clear. You take on these challenges and you explain where the game is. If there's a problem, you got a problem and state it. But if there's not a problem and you can answer it with facts, you put the facts out there. So the one that I think has really helped when we stepped off the curb to do this and to really set sail on it. The whole idea is that a lot of people didn't know there are 776 colleges and universities that play college football. And that means there's 81,000 guys playing college football in any given year in the United States of America. It's not just a few schools. It's not just some schools in the East or Southeast. All the way across the country, all 50 states play football. And then what gets to be really critical for all of that as well is that we like to point out when people say, well, the numbers might be down. Well, you realize there are 15,800 high schools in the United States that sponsor football. That's 1.04 million kids playing college football at any given time. 7.8% go on and play in college. And now we've got the phenomenon of high schools in the United States that sponsor girls tackle football. Forget flag football, which is growing all over the country and will be an Olympic sport in 2028. But now we've got the growth of that. Why is that important? Because we wanted women to know that you can play football, participate, and then when they have children, they would turn around and say, I'm going to let my son play. I understand the game. It's not a mystery anymore. I'm going to let my son play. But the other important parts of all of that is that there have been 105 colleges and universities that have added football since 2008.
Wow. Would you repeat that again? Since 2008, how many?
There's been 105 colleges and universities that have added football programs.
Wow.
So when you talk about 776 that sponsor, That means that in a fairly short span of time, 16, 17 years, 105 have come on board. And why is that important? Because the schools learned that to get more male enrollment, you better have a football team. Doesn't have to be a great one, but let's have a football team. They're not going to come there necessarily to play football, but they want to be at a school that has a college football program. Everybody immediately focuses on the really powerhouse programs in the Big Ten and the SECs. But when you take those 50 programs out, Notre Dame and those two big conferences, that's 720 schools that are playing college football every year. And those guys aren't going to go to the NFL. They're there to get a degree. They're there to play college football. They're there to go on and use this for the rest of their life. Now, 12 of those colleges and universities have added programs in 24 and 25. Those are the ones that are coming up. 18 colleges and universities offer sprint football. In the old days, Gene, when you and I were in school, it used to be called lightweight football.
Lightweight football, yes.
You couldn't weigh more than 175 pounds. Well, there's 18 schools in the country that play what's called sprint football. And now we're the first ones to tell you that there are schools that have dropped college football as well. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of those schools that have had it have gone away as schools. They no longer exist as institutions of higher education, and therefore the football programs have gone away. So we like to highlight the fact that it's still a great opportunity for guys to go and play football and get that degree and play at a lot of levels. And the great thing about the Football Foundation is that whether it's Division III, NAIA, we'll give you examples of real excitement around the country. Obviously, Alabama and Georgia's off the chart, Michigan and Ohio State. But go to St. John's sometime in Minnesota and watch them play. Watch the crowd that comes in and look at the tailgate before and look at all the games that they win. It goes on and on and on, and just wonderful people that graduate from there. Now, the big thing that we like to point out is that, again, this gets to be explains the game. People think that everybody that's in college football wants to go to the pros. Well, the fact of the matter is that in any given year, only 0.6% will sign as free agents or get drafted to play in the NFL. So that's 99.4% of all the guys that are playing college football in any given year are going to go on to do something different. And to play in the NFL is very special. It's very rare. You got to be a great talent, and good for them. But when they're there, the average is like 3.3 years that you're going to play in the NFL. And we at the National Football Foundation, as you know well, like to highlight the fact that a college education is very important. And the motto of the foundation is that we want you to build a house in 4 years that you're going to live in for 40. So you go to college, and even if you're going to transfer, you get that degree. Get that degree. If you go to the NFL and you play 3 to 5 years, what are you going to do the rest of your life? You're not even 30 years old. You might have a lot of money. Get that degree. Go on. You'd be a big help to yourself and your family and to your community and all of that. So these all gets to be the things that we like to focus on in the Football Foundation and use facts to talk about the good things that are happening in the game, Gene.
That's wonderful. That really is. The thing that surprised me in your numbers was that 115 institutions are going to have already added football or will add football in since 2008. That's incredible. Hatch, would you go over a little bit the graduation rates? A lot of people think that, well, these football players, they're here to just play football and they really don't care about getting a degree. Nothing could be farther from the truth.
Nothing could be further from the truth. And if you were to go on most campuses, now we've been around this a long time. You and I and a lot of people have been around this. There's some kids that are in college that are there to play football, but for the most part, those guys have figured it out. So with the statistics that we like to use all of the time, and we don't make these up. So this comes from the NCAA. 82% graduation rate for college football subdivision players. That means at the very highest level where these kids are just demanded all of the time for their time, the schedules that they have, and all of that. 82% is a graduation rate. Well, 70% is the graduation rate for the student body in general at Division I institutions. That again comes from the NCAA. So we don't make up these numbers um, that people go on and graduate and go on and do great things. So the programs that we have at the Football Foundation, one of the programs that you know is called I Played. And when we get these negative challenges about the game, that we'll turn around to people that play the game at all levels. So take Johns Hopkins. People say, well, Johns Hopkins, okay, it's a great academic institution in Baltimore. Well, you may say, well, they're not Notre Dame, they're not Alabama. No, but those guys are football players. They're probably going to be your doctor, or they're going to be the president of your university, or they're going to be lawyers, or they're going to be leaders in this country. And with that kind of background, you want those guys around. Those are the types of people that we like to focus on in the whole country. And as you know, our biggest award, the William B. Campbell Trophy, goes to the top scholar athletes in any given year. And the bright light on that is to show you can play at the very highest level, have a great grade point average, graduate, and still go on and play in the pros. You can do it all. You've just got to be really wired into that. So last year, who was our recipient of the Bill Campbell Award? But Bo Nix, quarterback, gets his degree from Auburn, goes to Oregon, has a great year. Is drafted in the first round. Of the 15 guys that we gave scholarships to last year, 70% were drafted. We had 3 that went in the first round. And the reason that that's important is to say, look, you can do it all. You've got the firepower to do it. Just sit down, and with the academic services at so many schools right now, you can get a degree and you can go on to be a football player in the NFL or go on to do whatever you want in life. So we get really excited about the potential of those guys. And in fact, one of the numbers that we put out, we haven't put it out for this year yet, Gene, but it gets close. We had 2,949 scholar athletes last year who played college football who had already graduated. 2,949. So roughly 3,000 guys that you're watching on television play college football, and it'll be the same again this year, have already earned their degree. And that's a very powerful number. So this again allows us to be sharp elbowed that yes, a lot of guys are focusing on going to the NFL, but they're taking care of business too. They're taking care of what they need to do in school to get their degree.
Those are great numbers, Steve. Thank you for sharing those with us. The National Football Foundation is multifaceted. You're really interested in education. The foundation is interested in so many things. Can you tell our listeners about the Campbell Summit that just took place in the Silicon Valley? I guess it was a week or two ago, that you were a part of, and who were some of the guests were, and maybe just a little bit about what went on there.
So 6 years ago, a great, really good football player at St. John's in Minnesota, interestingly enough, Mark Flynn, who was a very close, dear friend of Bill Campbell's, decided to stage something that would be a tribute to Bill after he passed away, unfortunately. So he started the Campbell Summit. And so every year we get somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 former scholar athletes, Campbell Trophy recipients, etc., who go to Stanford. Gets them in the law school dorms, which are beautiful, and they're there Thursday, leave Sunday, and they get to hear from some of the greatest leaders in the country. It's at the Hoover Institute at Stanford, so it's a great think tank to begin with. And people such as Condoleezza Rice will come in and talk, or Admiral Bill McRaven will come in and talk, or Anthony Noto, who's the head of SoFi, who was a fantastic football player at Army, went on to be the head of Goldman Sachs. He's now the head of SoFi. Comes in and talks. Former players like Steve Young. A lot of people remember him as a terrific quarterback for the 49ers, but he's a former scholar athlete and he's an attorney. Ronnie Lott, to get the passion that you can play pro football and go on and do great things.
You had Joe Moglia this year, didn't you, Steve?
Yes, we had Joe Moglio was one of the guys that spoke with him this year. And keep in mind to have these guys who have men and women who have a devotion to the game. As you know, we gave the gold medal to Condoleezza Rice, and she talked about learning the game of football from her dad and how important football was. And she could identify formations and whether quarterbacks were any good or not to a fault. But the whole idea was this is like a fraternity. So imagine 300 guys who come from all walks of life, all around the country, that are now doctors and lawyers and parents, teachers. We had this year and last year, Gene, we had a guy. Each year, we had a guy who graduated in the early 80s and went on to be a general in the United States Army. And they come back and they have an opportunity to um, share with those that did it the right way when they were in college. And how listen to people talk about how do you set goals? What are you going to do next? We live in a negative society. How do you rise above it? And a lot of the theme this year was it's easy to be negative. Do you start each day positive? And you sit there and you look around and you look at the guys that are sitting to the right of you and left of you, and you hear them talk, and you say, I went through a portal in life that's pretty special. I played college football. I got a degree. Look what I'm doing now, and I'm here sharing this with some of the great people. And so this is something that it's in a lot of ways it's hard to describe, but it's very special because if you are negative about the sport and you go in there and listen to these guys talk and the breakout sessions where they talk among each other and what they're doing and how to set goals, how to have a mission, how to have a vision, what are you doing for your family, etc. What are you doing for the country? What are you doing for your community? Um, Pretty special. And I know that we have a lot of guys that want to come every year, but it's the best time in August. School hasn't started at Stanford, so we get the dorm. They're very supportive of it. And Mark Flynn does a marvelous job of doing this. He was a linebacker on 1976 St. John's national championship football team for a Hall of Fame coach named John Gallardi. And he never lost any games. So talk about winning football. But the summit itself, Gene, is one of those things that when people talk about football, we invite them to come and see from the outside, be there, be around, listen to these guys talk, listen to leaders in the country talk to them, and so it's really a unbelievably fulfilling enterprise for the Football Foundation each year.
Wow, that's really, really special. Love those names and love those people that have played the game and are out there telling people how great the game is. Steve, the annual dinner for the National Football Foundation, the annual dinner is it's a bucket list for anybody and everybody who loves football. Can you tell us about the dinner?
Sure, and when we have the opportunity to work at the Football Foundation as employees, or we have people like yourself that are board members, we always reflect on, and which is why the people that we have on staff and the people like yourself on our board, from Tim Cook at Apple to Suzanne Nora Johnson, the chair of Intuit, the chair of the board of trustees at Southern Cal, et cetera, around the country, great leaders. We have a chance, and we are custodians of what was started in 1947 by having this dinner. And General Douglas MacArthur, when he was done being the general of the Army, he moved into the Waldorf Astoria and he said, my give back is we're going to do this black tie dinner. We're going to induct guys into the College Football Hall of Fame. We're going to recognize the leaders every year of football players and what are they doing in life. We're going to give scholar athlete awards. We're going to give money for football players that go on and be graduate students. Uh, Not everyone's going to make it to the pros or want to go to the pros. Or if they do, they put their big toe in, try it, doesn't work for them. We've got an $18,000 postgraduate scholarship ready for them to go on and do whatever they want to do in graduate school. So this all happens in one night. For decades, we were at the Waldorf Astoria in New York until it closed. We're in Las Vegas now. This year we'll be at the Bellagio Hotel, which allows us to get 2,000 people in black tie in there to celebrate the game. And when you've got someone like Archie Manning as your chairman, and you just have all of these wonderful people who contribute to the good of the game because they believe in the game. It is the ultimate celebration of football. So all the decision makers of college football are there, coaches. We have an always expanding list of uh, college football Hall of Famers and scholar athletes who come back. It's a celebration of the game, and in one night, over a 3.5 hour span of time, we get to talk about the good in the game and listen to people talk that you forgot about, and uh, it's just one of those where you say, I got to do this every year, and people do, and that's why we love doing what we're doing with this dinner.
I can honestly say it's my favorite day of the year when you get coaches together like Tom Osborne and Barry Switzer and Barry Alvarez and Bob Stoops, and they all come back and they're all talking about the good in the game, and they have so many of their players coming back. It was so nice to see Dabo Sweeney there last year with his wife Steve and all the former Clemson players crowding around them and how proud they were of their institution. It's just a special night. You can't describe it. You just have to be there to really understand it.
It is, and it's a lot of people, were nervous about us moving to Las Vegas with the event after the Waldorf closed. Still hasn't reopened, which was such a magical place for us to be. But we've got bigger crowds than we've ever had before. We've got meetings going on all over the hotel, Gene. Coaches being interviewed for jobs, and athletic directors, and just a buzz of activity over a 2.5 day span of time. So it's just that wonderful thing that says college football is okay. And we're very proud to be part of this because I think it's our 66th year of having this black tie dinner that celebrates the game. And it's just a ton of fun. And we always have tickets. We can get anybody in if all anybody has to do is want to come and be there.
Yeah, it's a great night. If you're listening out there, it's got to be on your bucket list. Reach out to the Hall of Fame, go online and purchase a ticket. Okay, now how do I become a Hall of Famer? How how who qualifies for the Hall of Fame first as a player and then as a coach? I'm sure that you have some rules and regulations. You have credentials that people have to have accomplished. So how do you go about selecting the Hall of Famers?
So it's fairly take the players first. It's fairly straightforward. You have to obviously have played college football. Doesn't matter at what level, because we put guys in from all divisions in college football. You have to have been, when you played at one time or another, a first team All American. And we use approved lists that have withstood the test of time from the NCAA. Keep in mind, the National Football Foundation is not part of the NCAA. We're not part of the NFL. We are our own entity. So we use a lot of different points on this to get our point across. But the NCAA over the years has 5 different entities that approve first team All Americans, such as the Associated Press, the Football Writers Association, things that have withstood the test of time. Over the years, there have been Hall of Fame uh, publications or entities that would be there for a short span of time, like the Bob Hope All America team in the past, or Kodak, that no longer exist. But the ones that do exist, the 5, they always pick a Hall of Fame. They pick Hall of Fame teams every year, and it's from there that we use as the basis by which they get in the Hall of Fame. The individual schools have to recommend each player. So the National Football Foundation does not reach in and say, "Oh, we remember this guy's a great player at Notre Dame," and automatically make him a candidate. We don't do that. The schools have to nominate their player to get into the College Football Hall of Fame. When that nomination comes in, it goes to a screening committee. We have 9 screening committees around the country. And for the most part, you would say they're divided geographically. And if the school nominates them, and we went through some times, as you know, in the past, there were some guys that just kind of got in. They were all Americans, but maybe their school didn't want them or they had other issues. Now, when the school says we want them in, it means it's one of their guys, and we use that phrase that it's their guy that they want in. It goes to the screening committee, and the screening committee then will recommend names out of all 9, and it goes to the honors court. And the honors court then will have approximately 75 names to review to go into the College Football Hall of Fame each year. And what's really remarkable about it is that we don't tell the screening committees who they recommend, but what comes out of the 9 every year are positions all across the board. You name the position, and there's guys that are recommended, which is really wonderful because we don't have to turn around and say, well, we didn't have any offensive linemen this year, or we didn't have any tight ends. We get those recommendations. And keep in mind, the school gets to nominate people that have played throughout their whole history. So for the most part, the guys that we're looking at right now played within the last 50 years. We have a whole nother committee, a veterans committee, that looks at guys 50 years and older, because we'll never get caught up, Gene. If there have been 5.6 million guys that have played college football since 1869, and we only take 15, maybe 20 players and coaches in any given year, we'll never get caught up. We will never get caught up. So these have to be the best of the best. And so they have to be a first team All-American. They have to be nominated by their school. They have to be submitted to go to our screening committees. Then they go to the honors court, and the honors court votes on that class for that year. And it's a fairly elaborate process. And there's a carryover from one year to the next. They'll remember that such and such a player was nominated a year ago, got some votes. Do we look at them again? They can remain on the ballot for 4 or 5 years at a time, so they don't just get forgotten or thrown away just because they didn't make it that one particular year. And we work very closely with the schools, very closely with all schools that say this is our guy or we want this guy. We don't always get it right. We don't always get it perfect, but we come pretty close. Now, when it comes to the coaches, coach has to have been a head coach in college for 10 years, has to have a 60% winning percentage, and has won at least 100 games. Now, in this day and time, if you coach 10 years, you're going to have 100 games. Those are the 3 criteria. The toughest one is the 60% winning percentage. And that's always the one that, gets a lot of the challenges to it, because there are people that get close and don't necessarily have that 60%. But we were told very carefully and very early on when I got on this job and our staff that this criteria was set up by the National Football Foundation in 1947, and you enforce it. You stay with that criteria.
And that makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to take somebody at 58.5%, then the fellow who is at 56.5, he wants to get in, and someone else. So we have to have some rules, and we have to stick by them. And I commend you for sticking to those rules and making coaches that get in really, really the best of the best.
They're the best of the best. And what's hard for myself and others that are intimately involved in the honors court and others, and like for yourself and all of that, it's really hard because a lot of us either worked with or played for coaches. And to have someone that you knew and loved that gave you a lot in life to be at 58 or 59% and not have a chance to get in is it's really hard. It's tough, but that's why the 60% holds up, and frankly, we get good marks for not being squishy on any of that criteria for players or coaches to get in the Hall of Fame.
Well, we're out of time on this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DiFilippo, and I want to thank Steve Hatchell, the president and CEO of the National Football Foundation, for being our guest 2 weeks in a row. Steve, keep up the great work. Congratulations to you and your staff. And the future of football is bright, my friend.
Well, it's great to be on this journey with you. Anytime, Gene. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your time this time, and we'll see you next time.